Good morning. I'm Wayne Bielgrad. I'm one of the pastors at Racine Bible Church, and it's my joy to introduce you to two friends of mine, Jay and Jenny Garity. Jay and Jenny have been attending our church for the past 4 years. God saved Jenny when she was a little girl, and about 3.5 years ago, God saved Jay. They have two little boys, Jacob and James, and I am excited for you to hear their story this morning.
I have always had a heart for adoption. Last year, I was connected with a few adoptive families, and through that, I found out about the orphan crisis and just how there are about 150 million orphans in the world, and there's a desperate need for families to care for them. I also became aware of the verses in the Bible that speak about how we are supposed to defend and care for orphans. So we started contributing financially to some families that needed financial help with their adoption finances. But there was just a burden that just kept growing and growing throughout the year last year for orphans. And Pastor Spencer was doing a series on Romans, and there was a sermon he gave in October on Romans 12 about the love and action section, and he talked about how love is generous in ways that are both costly and visible, and that really stuck out to me, and it just made me think of adoption and how that is both costly and visible. We were also doing a study in Matthew in our ABFs, and there were some things that were very convicting to me in that. Then at the end of October, Christian Barbosa came and spoke at RBC, and he gave a sermon also from Matthew about how if God is revealing something to us, it's our responsibility to take action and do what he's revealing to us. And at that moment, I knew that he was calling us to adopt. So that night I went to bed and I couldn't sleep. And the next day I said, okay, I've got to talk to him about it, no matter how crazy it sounds. So.
Yeah, and I remember when she first mentioned the idea of adopting, and at first I did think it was a crazy idea. We were a busy family of four, being in finance, both of us, especially myself. The first thing that came to mind is, how are we going to afford this? How much is it going to cost? We agreed that I would, kind of pray about it and just let her know what I thought of it. And within about a couple of weeks of that time, I remember driving in my car on 2 instances listening to Moody Radio, and just so happened that both times I was listening, there were stories about adoptions, and these women were talking about how adoptions had blessed their lives and their families, and I knew as well at that point that God was calling us to do this. And I came home after the second time I heard an adoption story and said, yeah, I think we should go for it. We should be obedient and heed the call.
So we started the process in December. We chose the China Special Needs Program because when we started researching countries to adopt from, it was just very heartbreaking to learn about how in China, children with any kind of medical need are abandoned often because their birth parents can't care for them. In March, we were matched with Josie, who is our daughter now, and it was interesting because when we first started the process, we had to say what kind of medical needs we were open to. And that's hard because you have to just say, will you take a child with a heart defect or with a cleft lip? And she came with some needs that we originally said no to. But God really used that time to stretch our faith even further, and we said yes to her file.
It costs about $40,000 to adopt a child from China. And we knew that through savings and stopping our 401k contributions and then just cutting our expenses, we could raise about $30,000. So that left about a $10,000 gap that we had to fill somehow. We had multiple fundraisers that were very, very successful. People at work from RBC all pitched in. It was unbelievable, along with just personal donations from friends and RBC family members and our own family members. And we were just we couldn't believe it. We were blown away by everyone's kindness and love and generosity. And we just, throughout this process, we could feel God being more and more involved in providing for this. So needless to say, we more than covered our gap. We were able to actually help a couple of other families that were going through adoption and needed to raise funds. So it was truly a major blessing. So 2 days before we left for China, Jenny visited our Tuesday night men's Bible study with her dad, and we had all 50 guys gather around Jenny and I and pray for us. Again, another awesome blessing to set us up for the trip. So on October 17th, our two boys, Jenny's dad and us, took off for China.
Mm-hmm. It was a very long trip, especially with the two boys, but we made it. And that Monday we had Gotcha Day, and that was something we had been looking forward to for 7 months, praying for Josie, and so to see her for the first time was it was a breathtaking experience, just like when we saw Jacob and James for the first time. It was amazing. She was very timid. The orphanage staff brought her in. They traveled over 3 hours to get there. They brought her in, and she was nervous, but she pretty quickly became comfortable with Jacob and James, and they went off and they played and they had fun. But when she wasn't looking, the orphanage staff snuck out, and she was heartbroken and very scared. And it was really one of the best and hardest days we've ever experienced. It's just so hard to think about what she's come from, being abandoned when she was 4 months old, going to an orphanage for 11 months, and then a foster home, and back to the orphanage. So she's come a long way in the last 8 weeks that we've had her. It's amazing to hear her start to speak English, and just to be attaching well to us and the boys. And but we have a long way to go. There's a lot of restoration that needs to happen with her for all the trauma that she's experienced over her 2 years of life. But her life has been redeemed, and it's just, I feel that the gospel has never been more alive to us, because it's just an amazing example of what God did for us through his son. That our lives have been redeemed, and so we're excited about her future, and that she'll always be, part of our family, and to see her grow and learn about Jesus is going to be really. And throughout this process, we've experienced many miracles, and one of the most amazing miracles is related to her medical needs. Her file said that she had hydrocephalus and cerebral palsy, and we have had her at the Children's Hospital in Milwaukee and at the pediatrician here in Racine. She's had tons of blood work done and tests. She's never had any vaccinations before she came to the United States, and so far it looks as like a perfectly healthy child. Right. She still has to have a CAT scan, but it seems that her skull might be a little bit misshapen, but it's nothing that would cause any brain damage or any kind of issue like that. We have another 2-year-old, and she plays right along with him, does the same things that he does. It's really been an amazing thing to see.
That brings us pretty much to now, and actually we both work at the same place, Sealed Air, in town here in Racine. And we heard back in July that our office is being relocated to Charlotte, which means we had another decision to make. Jenny and I were both offered relocation through the company, fully paid, all that. And Jenny had secretly, I guess, or had been praying that God reveal what we should do to me, and I can remember just a couple of weeks ago, just going to a normal Tuesday night men's study. Something God spoke to me in that study, and I had the answer that we need to stay here. we've got Jenny's family here, my family in Michigan, and our church family, which was it's a very important part of our lives here. So that's what is going on now, and we're here with Josie to stay for the near future at least.
RBC, you've got the Garitys, and Josie's coming soon.
Merry Christmas.
Good. Can you guys say, let's say do 1, 2, 3 and say Merry Christmas. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Merry Christmas.
That went well.
And Jay did a great job.
Yeah.